Okay, so there's a couple of things I want to cover today. Now, I do know you've done extensive work in Incubus and Succubus, so I'm not going to chew on that too much. But I want to be able to tell you about a case I was actually involved in. I've been involved in maybe is it two, only two cases. No, three actually. Three cases of incubus, succubus type stuff in 40 odd years. So it's equally
Rare.
rare, if not slightly rarer than poltergeist. And so let's sort of say hauntings, general. Poltergeist, I've done about maybe seven cases in 41 years. Succubus, three. Succubus, incubus cases, that's even rarer. They don't come along very often. And it can be a bit surprising when you do. But there was an investigation I did in a place called Morecambe in the UK. It's a coastal area. It's quite nice. Very large, Victorian type flat. Big, like three or four stairways, and it's been broken into a couple of different apartments. And the people there are having some disturbances now. What was really interesting, initially you're thinking, well, okay, it's a poltergeist type experience.
Mhm.
Um, no kids there, only a guy and a woman, and they are in their, I'd say, 50s, 60s, something like that. And an incident took place actually whilst I was there, because what's the chance? You go out for an interview. This is a stage of two or three interviews I did. I think by the second interview, I actually witnessed something. She was sat to my right, he was sat to my left, and she wanted to light a cigarette. I know, so he wanted to light his cigarette, and she had a lighter. So she threw it to him, and I'm sat in the middle on this settee, and there in these two chairs. And she threw it over to him, and I swear to God, it just disappeared in flight. It didn't even come, it did not come down. It just come. And I literally, it was like just a millisecond. It just went boom, gone, just gone completely. And she's just like looking around, and he's looking around and looking at me, and I'm saying, "Where did that go?" And she said, "It never came down. Where's it gone?" And it didn't land. Turned up actually inside the actual cigarette packet. Now, not many people actually put the actual lighter inside the cigarette, but
Mhm.
there's enough room in the cigarette packet just to fit it in. You see, and that's where it turned up
Mhm.
about, I don't know, 10 minutes later. She kind of reached for another, because he got another lighter out and reached for a cigarette. Oh, it's here. But it disappeared in flight and turned up. So I said, "Give us that lighter. Give it here. Can I have it?"
Gone.
Sort of thing.
Mhm.
But the problem is that I'm only going to sort of say, "Give it here and let me have it," if I've got something identical to bench test it against. And the other lighter they had
Mhm.
wasn't the same and stuff. So I think you've always got to have a bench test, because
Mhm.
that's the first analysis. You got to break that down and analyze that to get all the details. And then you have to bring the apport in and see if you can match the two. You see,
Mhm.
now if they, and what happens, you'd expect to match the two if they're identical. But what we hand up with the apport is something a bit like this sort of thing. And they don't seemingly, well, it kind of overlaps a little bit, but it doesn't exactly match. So, but that was the first thing. But you told me about a lot of different experiences there. They were having apparitional phenomena. Little girl, which seemingly dissipated from the knees down, so you couldn't see the extremities below. She must have had them, of course, but just kind of not fully visual of, the apparition. And but she was very physical in the sense that, I mean, though that half of her was, well, a little bit of her was missing, she could open drawers and she could look at stuff inside drawers. And she had a habit of looking inside this particular drawer in the bedroom when you used to wake up and see her in Victorian clothing, looking at like the jewelry bits, like her keys and some rings and bits and bobs. And she was fascinated with them. And he thought nothing more of it until things started taking a bit of a turn for the gentleman. Now, he started reporting something coming in the night. And after a while, I got him to explain what he was seeing. And he said it looked like a woman came out the wall but not walk out the wall, but literally crawl out of the wall about halfway up the wall.
Wow.
It kind of as if the wall came out of the wall like this, sort of a thing. And I'm thinking, did it walk out? Climbed out the
Oh.
wall, and this thing had like a tattyish dress, massive, crazy hair, black.
Mhm.
Face was quite white, and he used to be paralyzed. He'd wake up and he'd be absolutely paralyzed. Sometimes he said he saw two different clouds when she was there in the room. Now, one was a dark one was a kind of a grey one, but there were definitely two kind of morphing clouds in the room. And she would come over to him and touch him in ways, of course, which is, and of course he's sleeping next to his partner, his girlfriend. And he can't move, and she can't, he can't make enough to ever wake her up. And he's just totally, and this went on for a while. But what was interesting, he said that always beside her
Mhm.
was a small figure. And this is his own words. He said, this small figure was not human. It was about 2.5, 3 foot tall. And it's not an alien grey. It's some goblin type, awful
Imp or
looking
something,
little
yeah.
black thing. But he got the
Wow.
impression that this was in charge of that. This was the boss. This is how he said it to me. This thing was the boss. And I said, how do you? I said, I just know. And this kept going on about maybe 2 or 3 times in a week, and that was a lot. To the point where he started to sort of try and manipulate the paralysis. Initially, he couldn't move at all, but after a little bit, he managed to be able to just move his hand just a little bit, you know. But he never said nothing. He just thought, I'm gonna, I want this to end, sort of thing. So he was trying to train himself to be able to move a little bit without giving it away. And he said this particular night, and this is what really got me, was really interesting. This particular night, it happened again. This thing crawls out the wall, and there's a small thing appear in the room. It comes over very quite slowly onto the bed, pressing down the bed over to him, and it put its hand on the bed, and it was quite close to his hand, you see. So what he did is he managed to somehow reach out and grab it, and it on the wrist, and he grabbed it so hard. Well, this thing was there's a bit of a struggle going on then, because the more it was pulling at him and his arm moving, he started to come out of the paralysis. You see, it's like
Mhm.
that movement of it tugging to try and get away and his arm moving
Broke it.
brought him out a
Yeah.
little bit. Well, he grabbed hold of the bloody thing even harder. So this thing, mad panic now, let out this terrible screeching sound. And he said it literally was hurting my ears. I was like, you know, sort of a thing.
Hmm.
And it was like it wasn't going to stop until I let go. And I just couldn't bear it any longer, and I ended up letting go. It never returned after that night. That is like the breach had happened from paralysis. It never returned after that. But interestingly enough, that was the very same place where the aborted mug took place.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
there was by practice I said, okay, so this is the mug, and where was it? It was over there, and then I was making a drink and whatever, I put it there, sort of thing. I went to grab that, turn around, it's gone. So it's just where's my mug gone? I'm going a bit crazy here, or is it something strange? Because they were used to a lot of strange things there. Turned out it was found some minutes, no, about an hour later, actually, almost something like that, and they put it aside, not mixing it with the other mugs, of course. So I said, do you by chance have another mug? And they said, well, yeah, it was a set of 4 mugs that we got at Christmas time. It was only a few months ago at Christmas. And we bought a new
Mhm.
set of mugs, and there was 4 in a box. And this was one of them. I said, fantastic. Do you have any of the other mugs? She said, yeah, got 3. Said, right, let me just, can I mark this mug? She said, yes. So I just marked the little mug so I couldn't get them mixed up.
Mhm.
I said, can I? Do you mind if I take away this apported mug? Because I don't think apport should be left in the home. And you know reasons why that, because I've talked to you before
Mhm.
about it, about
Right.
the old anchor situation, you know.
Mhm.
And she said, yeah, well, yeah. You know, so I ended up with two mugs. And I tell you, if you went like this, you would not know the difference. So thank God I'd marked
Mhm.
one. And I went off to Lancaster University. Luckily, I just managed to. I was working with two other people at the time on the investigation, and they'd actually made contact at Lancaster University to allow this analysis to take place. And I thought, wow, fantastic opportunity here. So what they did is they took the normal mug and broke it down and put it through analysis, and data came out. It was great because you could see even the ceramics, you could see the glazing on it. You know,
Mhm.
you could see the heating process that had taken place through the manufacture and the paint and stuff. All these different things and chemical reactions that you can see for application of the paint, application of the glaze, the heating process, all that, and the chemical analysis of the actual ceramics. So
Mhm.
you could see all this. A little bit of ink and was like, what is this? He says it's dye. Or what is that? He says it's the marking on the bottom of the mug. So that's how good this
Yeah.
stuff was. So of course, when they did the analysis, it was just did not. And they were like, well, there shouldn't really be any difference. You know, they weighed, I think, 3.19 grams each. I think they were
Mhm.
weighed first, measured, temperature, everything. There was nothing different, really, according to the details that they had between the two mugs. And of course, when they're looking at the details of the second mug to apply to the data for the first mug, it just kind of didn't. It was a bit like overhang a little bit, but it was data there that wasn't there in the normal mug. So what's going on here? So anyway, they brought these screens up, and you could literally see the difference in the diatheric reaction between the two. One was completely different than the other. The way it looked, you could see the difference in the analysis. And micro, telescopic little lenses that look very close up to the molecular details of it.
Mhm.
So, wow, well, this is really strange, and they couldn't conclude as to why there's a difference. You see, so this is the place where that actually happened. So, of course, whilst we took the mug away, there was some. We noticed that little suppression, which we've talked
Mhm.
about before, like confusion. Oh God, right, sort of thing. But we assumed that there were probably other apports, might have been other apports in there, and we wouldn't have known. But the suppression
Mhm.
only lasted for a day, not like 4 days or 3 days, but one day. But they noticed a suppression in one day because they used to get like six, seven, maybe more incidents all the time in one day. And this is also the place where a butter knife. I walked in to the kitchen and there's a
Mhm.
knife stood up on the board, and it's not a wooden board. It's like a glass board, cutting board.
Mm. Yes, I'm familiar with those. Yeah.
It looks marble, but it's not. It's actually glass, and
Mhm.
it stood up. I'm looking at this knife stood up, and it's not a pointy knife. It's like a butter knife. It's a curved
Mhm.
edge, but it stood up, and I'm thinking, my brain doesn't register properly. My brain looks at it and goes, "Is it stuck down by something?" And I touch it, don't I? Right? And it just falls over. And I'm looking at this knife. There's nothing holding it up. And I immediately thought, oh, you messed up there, Steve, because your actions were like so inquisitive as to how the hell is that standing up. I didn't take a photograph of it. I didn't do anything. I just walked. What the hell is that? And I walked up and I looked at it and I just thought, what the hell's that? And then there was no
It's
balancing
gone.
point. There is no balancing point for this butter knife on this glass. You will never do it. Even if you tried it at home, you will never find a microscopic balancing point. But
Mhm.
phenomena does. And I think, how does it manage the balance point? Everything has a balance point. But you think even micro air part, even me moving into the room might just cause it to fall over, but it
Mhm.
didn't. And I was allowed to go right up to it and touch it. And I'm realizing, well, no, I shouldn't have done that. I should have just measured and photos and all sorts of different things. So my fault. But it's part of the process of your learning. When you realize that they can find microscopic balancing points on things, and that is a tremendous feat because you won't do it. You can't do it even by hand. It's just impossible. But they had a suppression for about 24 hours, and that was that particular case. Now, it's a weird incident when you talk about these Succubi type cases because he was the one that was, being affected by this, not her.
Mhm.
Now, it does tend to be more female than male, which are affected by these incidents, as you know.
Mhm.
So I started sort of getting into that a little bit. I ended up writing an article for New Woman magazine, remember us? And this was an American magazine. And there was my article and Nicole Kidman's article, right?
That's awesome.
Right next
Wow.
to each other. And my article was about succubi in regards to breaking up or disturbing um, fornication between partners. So a man and his wife,
Yes.
friend, they're trying to have some type, well, they're fornicating because they're in a relationship, but it's disturbed. They're disturbed by this entity that's seemingly just always interrupting. Now, have you heard of things like that? Have you come across that before?
Yeah, yeah. So these are probably the most uncomfortable conversations one will ever have
Yeah,
as
a
a
little bit.
researcher with
Yeah.
experiencers, right? I mean, I've had both of them. Um, and you're exactly right, Steve. The common pathology is absolutely female, male on female, male like possessing female. And yeah, and what's so unique about your particular case study is it's game changing because I don't think anybody ever thought of sitting down in these cases in the home and saying, are you missing anything? Right? Is the phenomenon right? You know where I'm going. Is the phenomenon trying to anchor itself here? Is there some kind of occult transference present? Um, but in my experience, what's fascinating about my cases is it does implicate some kind of annual program where one of the incubi entities would only come in October within a certain week period in a week.
Mm.
And it was fascinating. Once I got there at the house, the house was like 150 years old. It's very worn down. And I'm looking at the family as they're eating dinner and watching TV, and I'm looking at them through the window, knocking on the door. They're they should be seeing me, Steve. Look, for 20 minutes I'm knocking. Finally, I call them, the husband. I watch him answer the phone. Hello, Nathaniel, where are you at? You were supposed to be here 15 minutes ago. I'm looking right at you, knocking on the door. And that's when I knew we have problems. This isn't just, somebody's
Yeah.
imagination or fantasy. So I get in there. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm just realizing I'm looking at that. When you talk about stuff, I'm looking at the little details of things you say.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that is the manipulation of sound again, then, isn't it?
Of course, absolutely.
Being
It was trying to
amplification
stop.
or non
Yep,
hold.
absolutely. Same mechanism. And so that's when I was like, okay, I knew we had problems. So once I get in there was such a pervasive just presence. It soaked the entire environment. And
Mm.
I know people, and I know you've experienced this, I have as well, but it's like the feeling of being watched 10 times as much. It's just something is seeping into you. And the longer you're there, you're probably going to get more of a hitchhiker or a
Yeah.
hijacker. And so it's
Yeah.
kind of in the back of your mind, you're like, oh Lord, what's going to happen after this case?
Mm.
So anyway, so I get in there, and the husband is a non-believer, like he's a skeptic. He doesn't believe in anything, no God, no spirit, no paranormal. He is a veteran. He's an alpha male, and he's like, I don't really believe this is actually going on. Well, of course, we had the EMF meter out, and from my right side, I feel this presence coming, and the wife is white knuckled, grabbing the kitchen table. And all she kept saying is, it's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. That's when we heard footsteps.
Mm.
Oh, this is creepy. Coming down the stairs, right? Oh,
Yeah.
gives me chills to this day. But she's white knuckled. The dishes are clinging together. Nathaniel, please get this out of my house. And so that was our initial investigation. The second time this happened over COVID, we get there. The husband had partial paralysis. He had Bell's palsy on one side of his face. And this is the danger for those who are going to watch this. This is the danger of a lot of paranormal shows. It's not rooted in data, it's rooted in just pop culture. Because I asked the husband what he did, like what happened. He said, well, I openly challenged whatever this is through the right of provocation. I said, well, where did you get this idea?
Yeah.
From a TV show.
Oh no.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm telling you, his face is partially paralyzed. And I'm going, oh my God, what's going on? So,
Mm.
anyways, this entity was crawling in bed at night with him. And he asked me a question, but he kind of answered it in mid-sentence. His eyes got real big and he realized the implication. He said, Nathaniel, he goes, I don't get it. He goes, according to my wife, this thing comes into our house once a week in the month of October. This
Mm.
has been going on for years. And it's worse now than it ever has been. He's like, but I don't understand it. He goes, because my wife usually goes to bed before I do. Finally, I'm like, okay, we'll go to bed together. You fall asleep. I'm just going to sit down and watch. I'm just going to watch what happens. And he said, Nathaniel, like clockwork, next thing you know, something starts to move on the bed. It's crawling on the bed. And he said, next thing I know, I could see my wife's hair being twirled. And
Yeah.
then I feel something rub against my feet. And then he goes, Nathaniel, how could it be in between? And he stopped and he said, oh my God, it was laying in between us, wasn't it? I said, sounds like it, brother. Sounds like it.
Could it fit
So
in
he,
between them, Nathan?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird. It's so weird. Um, but what happened was he challenged it openly, and he was worried. He's like, I can't fight something I can't see.
Mm.
And, I've got to protect my household. Well, he challenges it. And in the middle of the night, he has a dream. And in this dream, something is beating him, pummeling him in the face over and over again. And he said, Nathaniel, he said, it literally felt like somebody, like a man, is beating me to death. He said, I woke up to realize that I was paralyzed. My
Mm.
whole left side was paralyzed. And he said, I went to the doctor. The doctor didn't know what happened. The doctor asked, well, were you like in an automobile collision? Were you in a fist fight? You have a lot of head trauma. You have a lot of neurological issues. Like, we don't usually see this unless you've been in a car wreck or you've had a traumatic brain injury. And he's like, I didn't know what to tell them. But whatever this is, and people try to act like this phenomenon is purely spiritual.
Mm.
Again, the problem that we're having is that whatever this phenomenon is, it wants to make us think
Yeah.
this is simply a mind environment because the implications are terrifying, that this is something that is masquerading as a dream demon, and essentially, but at the end of the day, these are very physical beings. I've had an incubus case, another one where the experiencer felt this entity on her back, whispering in her ear, and she went to grab it. And when she did, her hand slipped, and she's like, it had long fingers, and that's when it left.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
whatever these are, that's the key point, is that there is
Yeah.
something extremely physical going on. And it's not just spirit husbands and spirit wives.
No.
But there's something, yeah, whatever these are, they have their own victimology. It's literally like they are their own persons.
It
Strange.
really is. I mean, I remember talking some years ago, and this really surprised me. And this is a scientist. He lives
Mhm.
alone. And he said, oh, I have one of these things, but I'm happy with it.
I've heard that too, and the one of these
Yeah.
cases, the husband wasn't because, and you're right, you hit the nail on the head earlier, where it's almost like a secondary result or a consequence of
Yeah.
intimacy with these beings, where it cuts that off between couples. Now, what's fascinating about this earlier case study, where it was in between the couple, at first blush, I thought it was after the wife. This is
Right.
crazy. But its pathology mutated. And the last time I spoke to her, I said, well, what happened? She said, well, I realized that it really wasn't after me, it was after my husband. How do you know that? Because it went from her to him. And now he is having suicidal ideations. He's an alcoholic and he had to remove himself from the house. The
Yeah.
phenomenon went with him.
Mm. Yeah.
So
It's a
it's all weird.
change. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people need to understand that.
he can just switch, can't it? It's interesting. There was a case I did in, it's a place called Farley Way, which is in Stockport in the UK, where a shape, a cloudy, shadowy
Mm.
shape, and this became quite known over a period of a week or so with this one family because the people and the neighbours were seeing something following the lad, young lad who's about 16 or 17, but it would be behind him, following him. And it was described as like a shadowy shape of a person, but it was cloudy in a sense of speaking, slightly elevated off the land, but would be following him. And he was oblivious to
Mhm.
it, but the neighbours were watching this unfold. And on one occasion, it actually said that the guy opposite, he saw it lift off and go up and into like the wall, yeah, that the top part of the house, where like as if it was going through the outside wall and into a bedroom. But they ended up with those type of experiences as well, which was very strange. And one incident she reported to me, she'd been shopping, she came in, it was her husband's birthday. She purchased some aftershave for him. So she puts the bags on the
Mhm.
table. But as she's placing the bags on the table, she hears a bang upstairs. And she's still got the two bags in her hand. And she knows she's in on her own, but she thinks, oh, have we got, is someone broken in? So of course she lets go of the bags and she walks up. She's walking to the bottom of the stairs. She's shouting up there and this, that, and the other. And eventually, no sound. She thinks, well, there's no sign of a break-in. So what was that? So she gingerly goes upstairs and she's looking at where the sound is above the kitchen is the bathroom. So she goes into the bathroom and in the bath is the very bottle of aftershave that she purchased her husband, which was in the bag, what she was holding at the time of the bang. So it
That's
was like
insane.
that fast of that incident. So she's got hold of this and she's like, what the hell? And she goes
Mhm.
downstairs and she's looking at it, it's not there. So of course we get to that point, is that an apport? You know? Well, yes,
Right.
in a sense it is, splash it all on, you know.
That's the most expensive clone ever right there, brother.
But yeah, but when you look at the details, Nathaniel, when you get the details of paranormal side, ufological side, paranormal side, you got the phantom pregnancy stuff. And I've dealt with a woman called Julie who was having these types of incidents, incubus type incidents, but she showed the signs of being pregnant. And she thought she was pregnant. Turned out to be what the hospital said, which really is a bit of a mystery because nobody really knows, but they have to come up with terminology, don't they? A
Mhm.
phantom pregnancy. On the opposite side of the page in a ufological, you've got these
Missing fetuses.
missing fetuses.
Yeah.
Type of utopic pregnancies. That they may look like they have been pregnant. When you look at these two and you think to yourself, well, are we not looking at the same thing here? Of course, we're talking different paranormal and ufological, but the same sort of thing. And there seems to be evidence in both camps to look like, yes, they may have been pregnant, but couldn't have been pregnant in a sense. In
I
fact, have you
do.
come across the phantom pregnancy
Yes.
situation? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's some of the most fascinating research, at least not because I've done it, it's just the most fascinating research I've come across because there's a lot of meat on those bones and it's not very well covered in phenomenology outside of ufology saying, okay, by the way, it's hybridism. And I'm afraid that if they recontextualize hybridism throughout history, we start missing what's actually going on. And so what blew my mind is in the same cases we've had phantom pregnancies, we've also had possession in the same body. In the 16th century, in the Die Buch phenomenon, they
Yes.
called this the impregnation of the dead in the bodies of the living.
Mm.
And the reason was is you had the same pathology of the incubus However, now it's implanting its consciousness within the hybrid mother and a fetus at the self same time. And so in Safdi, Israel, that was a village in Israel in the 16th century, it's the same thing, right? Okay, the female's lying in bed. She feels this masculine presence literally hovering over her. And I've had cases like this where the husband's on the phone with me, Steve.
Right.
Nathaniel, she's paralyzed in bed. The only thing she could say is, babe, it's hovering right over top of me. So it's very prevalent, but that's what they had. And it's one of those times in history where the phenomenon kind of slips a bit, right?
Yeah.
Where it shows up and you're like, wait a minute, I'm going to write that down. That's a mutation
Hmm.
in its evolution. In these case studies, the same women that were possessed by entities became pregnant by them. And the exorcists were performing the Lavouche method. They were feeling two pulses in their body and two
Oh,
heartbeats
yeah, double
in their
signatures.
body. Yes,
Yes.
double
And
signatures.
well, we got it listed as double signatures, but
Yeah,
it's same thing, yeah.
same thing, brother. And in these cases, what's so fascinating is these demonologists came to a startling conclusion. And of course, it's a hypothesis or a theory at that, but it was startling nonetheless. And they said, is it possible that these women weren't pregnant by the incubus? They're pregnant with it, and it's creating something to inhabit itself. But yeah, they're present now in these exorcists or these exorcisms, rather, when the phenomenon removed the consciousness. According to the mythology, it removed the fetus as well. And so both of them were gone at the same time. Now, what's interesting is they said that their theory was that the entity had curled up in a fetus position in the womb, but that was 16th century. But yeah, it is the same thing. It's highly evasive. It's alpha. Like I said, it will target the man to get him out of the way. To what's crazy, again, dealing with the aspect of it being a program, it will increase the probability of inception.
Because the people don't really get into this much, but in the Native American stuff, there is an occult side to that. And
Absolutely.
when they wanted to have these entities birth through the human experience, they would actually paint sigils on in the practice, paint sigils on to the
There you go.
bodies of acceptance, the bodies of acceptance. And these things would apparently, it was said that they would attach themselves to the bodies. And I think they actually, this information kind of got rolled into a film called Manitou years ago. I don't know if you remember seeing it, but it was like a small
Mhm,
thing. A woman went into a hospital with a growth on her back. And
mhm.
this growth got bigger and bigger and bigger and literally burst out the back one day. And it was like a small childlike thing, but it was definitely wasn't, but it was
Mhm.
actual film was called Manitou. And I think that was a reference to this type of occult practice of the Native Americans. But it is interesting though, when you talk about those type of experiences, are we dealing with something far right, far left? Because what you're saying there is like something that fits into kind of that middle-aged type of
Right.
experience. Prior to that, though, if you go right back to the beginnings, you talk about immaculate conception.
Inception. Yeah.
If you talk about future stuff, you're talking about people who claim to have had fetuses removed through alien abduction or become pregnant and then removed. And even question as to no recall of fornication of anybody to be pregnant in some cases.
Correct.
So
Correct.
you've got either side. If we've got the source at the top here, we've got all this ancient times to modern times and in the middle, all relatively
Mhm.
doing the same thing. Just obviously throughout time, it's been perceived differently. Oh, it's the alien abduction phenomenon. It's this, that. They've been doing that. Or it's the Holy Spirit. It's God. It's this, that. It's immaculate conception. Um, but in the middles, you've got you've got all this stuff like succubi, incubi, and demonic stuff, or whatever these things are. But all of it is painted the same color, really, isn't it? Really, it's all the same.
Same thing. Same thing.
Yeah.
And even in UFO abduction lore, you have cases where, like even one of Dr. Carla Turner's cases specifically, where the wife was abducted and she was pregnant with something, something, and told the husband this is not a viable specimen. And so whatever we're dealing with, though, we as a species, it's not that just that we lack control of our perception of the phenomenon, we lack control of our memory of our perception of the phenomenon. Because even Dr. Carla Turner,
Hmm.
her son was being abducted, and so she's wigging out, right? Obviously, like we got a problem here. You can touch anybody, but not my family, you
Yeah.
know. And so she calls a family meeting with her ex-husband, the son's father. In the middle of the family meeting, the ex-husband goes, Carla, don't you remember when you were pregnant by one of these beings? No. Now
No.
she worked with abductees.
Yeah, she did.
And she's like, no, I have no memory of that. I don't believe that ever happened. Whatever these beings are, if I can even go a step further, in incubi literature, the most, I guess, prolific author regarding that subject matter was Father Sinistro of Yamino, who's a Franciscan priest. Now, his cases, again, he was showing up within an hour of the phenomenon manifesting. And just like Barney and Betty Hill, right, where the entity left a secretion on the clothing, these beings did the very same thing with these experiencers. Now, some of them actually died from the phenomenon. And upon physical examination of the body, obviously approved by the family, right? Whatever we needed to do, do it. We're trying to figure out what happened. A lot of them were marked with sigils underneath their eyelids, where the phenomenon had marked them in areas they didn't even
Yeah.
know about.
Yeah. I know. I know of where they've been in the mouth as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, people again, people like to ignore that, or they if they even in fact know about it, that is. But
Yeah.
that is something that needs to be discussed further because we're not just finding sigils like we've talked about in times past in other aspects of the research of the phenomenon. Even in incubi lore, they're present.
Yeah.
Sick, isn't it? Sick.
I mean, luckily, I could say I don't get too heavily involved in some of those incidents. I mean, I had a good conversation. It's interesting because comment people have made comments, even some of the stuff that we put out is, oh, by the way, have you actually talked with Daryl Sims?
Mhm.
And I said, well, yeah, I have talked with Daryl Sims, but I've talked with Daryl. Daryl doing what his type of work, he won't put this stuff out because he just thinks it's not a good subject to
Mhm.
get out there,
Yeah.
especially at conferences. Well, maybe if you're face to face with people, strangers, I can understand maybe. People don't have a choice of what they're going to hear when you're in a conference, but people have a choice to click on a video if we're going to let them know we're going to be talking about something like this. They have a choice. So, and he didn't want to get into that, but I had sort of closed meetings with Daryl, and he's telling me some terrible stuff, terrible stuff. Things that really bad, the bad side, the real dark side of the alien abduction phenomena out generally. He'll talk to me in meetings, sort of thing, and shared stuff, and I think, bloody hell, that's pretty heavy going. But yeah, he says, but I don't, I just have to stick to some of the mainstream stuff because I don't think people are ready to even get into that. What he's worrying is because, there are certain key areas around the world, especially through in the States, certain states, Bible Belt areas, that they're going to read. There's no divide. There's rather, oh yes, it's angelic experiences, or it's the demon, it's the devil himself. There's no in between. Is one extremity to the other, and massive gap between them, of course, but void of nothing. Just nothing there. And it's either switches to that or it's that, and nothing in between. And of course, some areas, when he discusses, does groups, conferences, and stuff, these are in those areas. I mean, like I say, I did one with Barry in Arkansas.
Mhm.
We'll never get the invite back. Let's just say that we left the crowd in tears. And some of them were really frustrated with us saying, I've introduced my 12-year-old daughter to this phenomenon. We were like, oh my God. And of course, we knew straight away, well, this hasn't gone down well, but it's because of that belief system. You don't need a belief system. The phenomenon is the phenomenon, it's no belief system required, should we say. But I'm not going to deny though, because a lot of people ask in comments, well, is it all bad? And they keep doing this. So I thought, look, let's just get this on the table. I am aware of, see, it's just,
You can't, can you?
I just, it's just so hard for me. But
Yeah, I know.
what is a good experience? Well, people say, okay, well, it's euphoric, and it's been helpful, it's been guiding, it's been enlightening. Okay, but the phenomena can also do that in a negative sense.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that because some people out there say, you're doom and gloom. No, I'm not. Because I'm never, ever going to turn around and say, don't worry, guys, I know what it is. It's all demonic. I'm never going to turn around and say that because I think the process of demonic and the occult visualization is just these archetypes, is just another mechanism. It's throughout time, it's played its cards in different
Mhm.
ways and shown different things. And of course, that time it was, oh, well, it's going to be this. It's, oh, it's something related to the witchcraft, sorcery, demonic, angelic, mystic. There's all different names. But the thing is, it's kind of always the same stuff anyway, just called different things. But when you talk about euphoric experiences, people who you see a pattern of events, and that pattern of events is what is referred to as anchoring God to the ground. Now, apparently, it's a certain feeling. It's a feeling that is an overwhelming feeling, a very controlling feeling, an omnipresence, which you might consider godly. It might even take you to a prayer position.
Mhm.
The prayer position would initially, under those circumstances, would be considered, the acceptance of the Holy Spirit and godly. It's a godly encounter, spirit, an angelic encounter, whatever. But like I say, I've had that experience, but not in the mind of I'm saying this is euphoric or
Mhm.
it's godly. But I've had that experience and literally brought to my knees and completely welled up, lost control,
Yeah.
and experienced an emotion that does not. I've thought a lot about this over the years, and it still bothers me even talking about it today because that's how impressionable it was for me. It impacts your life and it stays there. And when you talk about it, you kind of relive that moment. But there's an emotion to this, and it's not anger, it's not love, it's not this, and this. And we won't identify it until you have it. When you have it, you are overwhelmed, you're losing your breath, you can't control yourself, you might be taken down to your knees. But the thing is that a euphoric experience? Some people would argue, well, that, Steve, is anchoring God to the ground. It is that expression of the Holy Spirit, godly power coming down, anchoring itself on the ground where you are in praise format or worship, homage, whatever. It is that practice that the Vatican have pushed the
Mhm.
process of prayer to the point of this euphoric anchoring of God to the ground and it's having these beautiful, angelic, euphoric experiences. Now, the problem for me is that I've come to a point where I can't determine what
Mhm.
one is to the other. In fact, they kind of blend into each other to the point where it's very difficult to say this or that. It just, I'd
Mhm.
rather say it's all than none at all. It's all something, but it's all having the same power because you say, oh, God has the same power as Satan does. And therefore, Satan can do anything to make you think it's God
Yep.
or godly
Mhm.
intent. If that is the case, how are you ever going to know anything? We can't. It's
Mhm.
impossible. It's been possible for us poor humans to say that's what that is. It never
Mhm.
can happen because we can always say, well, you were tricked by the best, you know?
Yeah. Or happens to the best of us, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Don't.
So, well, to be transparent with you, I do not trust. Well, let me back up and say this. I trust very little that comes from the Catholic tradition. And that's not to insult any of the viewers or anything. I just, um,
No,
I
you can
realize
see the
very.
faults. You can see the faults in these religions, and not just that religion. In many religions, you can see the problems of it here, and it's just adoption of older theories, hypotheses, practices, mysticism, all sorts of different things rolled into one. If you break it down, because people look at the Vatican as just like this big house, and we're coming along and looking at each brick and going, well, what's this brick from? Where's that brick come from?
Right.
That's what we're doing basically. And when we realise, we look at the brick, hang on a second, this wasn't born through Catholicism. This belongs to Sumerian
Yeah,
practices,
it's
Babylonian
syncretism.
secretisms, and all sorts.
And this gets back to my work in demonology, and I've talked to scholars about this because my dad's a pastor and he would fly in Bible scholars from Israel. So we'd be eating Chipotle and he would want to talk about something else. I'm like, who cares what you want to talk about? I want to talk about this. And I was a kid, so I get away with it, right? I was a little past. And so, even the demonology in biblical antiquity was inspired by other cultures. And so they would employ loan words. And so Shadim, well, that's Shadim. No, it's the Akkadian loan word Sadu. And it was to define deceased ancestors or what they believed to be dead people that turned into the demonic. And we don't even know if that's the case. So my point here is, again, I don't trust that version of demonology. It's just
Yeah,
borrowed from other cultures. And then once they articulated it, reincorporated it, if I could talk into their theology, now they're right, the other's wrong. It's like that you got it from them.
that's
And
it.
this is a frustration I've had with
It
even some of the Nephilim research. The term Rephaim is a Ugaritic ritual bowl term, Repiumai. And what's interesting about this is that the same beings wanted worship, right? Veneration, sacrifices, and altars. It's just these were evolved and ascended masters in their family. It's like, but wait a minute, what's at the root of this?
mm,
Beings that want worship and they're willing to play the role whatever they can to get it from us. And I know I'm pig trailing, but I distrust a lot of that
yeah.
because even the word demon is not in the Bible. It's in the Septuagint, which is the Greek
Yes,
translation of the Old
that's right. Yeah,
Testament.
yeah.
So it's not even to the first century where you start to see that come to the fore. So then what was before that?
Well, the thing is that angels were pretty late on the scene as well, weren't they? In a documentary,
Yeah, yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
Wonder
No.
if it was to match the amount of Saint and stuff. It's like it's like have it equal at least, to some degree. It's really a problem. But in modern days, though, you talk about this connection with the blood, and that's all about intent, apparently. That we never lived in times many years ago where there was collections of blood, but now we do. There it is, buddy. Yeah. Well, it's been a good one, mate. I know it's been a bit dark
My
this one,
brother.
but you know what? I think we were kind of we were circling around it for a while,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna have
Oh,
to
I
get
know.
into this. But get
You have
some
to.
rest, mate, because you look a bit tired, and
Yeah.
I'll send this over to you shortly. I
All
will
right,
do.
brother.
All right.
Have a
Talk
good
to you
week,
soon,
buddy.
buddy. All right.
Later.
Ta for now, mate.